to SKNIS Perspectives,
an interactive program of the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, aired weekly on this radio station.
On today's edition, the chairman of the Solid Waste Management Corporation, Alfonso Bridgewater, stops by to give an update of activities. He touches on various topics including the acquisition of a new baler, fires at the Connery landfill, and the potential move to waste to energy. Hello, I'm Joel Cranston, your host for today's program. When the garbage is collected weekly, how many persons actually consider what happens to it after it goes into the trucks or even to the landfill at Connery? Most of you will probably guess that it is buried deep in the earth. And for the most part, you'd be right. But there's another method of storage being carried out. Alfonso Bridgewater, chairman of the Solid Waste Management Corporation, tells Ian Richards about this new process and other developments within his agency.
Most recently, the Solid Waste Management Corporation got officially commissioned back in October 2002. That's when we moved from a waste disposal site into a sanitary engineered landfill. Since then, we've been soldiering on, so to speak. And more recently, in fact, in the month of September, we had commissioned, so to speak, a baler system and the associated load all equipment which goes with that baler system. That's the latest thing that is going there. You would have heard from that point to this point, you would have also heard that we had a sanitary engineered landfill cell. Let me make the distinction between Connery landfill and Connery sanitary engineered cell. There was a cell into which we used to put the garbage. That has reached its capacity stage. That's the cell. So we are still disposing of waste at Connery, but not into the sanitary engineered cell. That cell, when it was commissioned, was expected to last about 7 to 8 years, using 1998 figures and waste disposal figures. But we have been able to extend it an additional 3 years, so it's last 10 years or more, by putting into place a number of productive, efficient, and effective means on the landfill site itself. So we extended the life for an additional 3 years, but it's time to move on now.
So, Mr. Bridgewater, just to be clear, explain to the public what exactly is a cell is. I'm gathering that it is a space.
What you have, a cell is basically a hole in the ground in which you put garbage. But sanitary engineered cell means that you clean it out, sanitary. Engineered means there's pipes, there's stone, different grades of stone. As you come up the level, you may have 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, then some dirt, and then you have all these plastics and these pipes so that anything you throw in there wouldn't reach down to the soil and contaminate the water. Even though at Connery there's no potable water, we didn't want to take the chances for anybody to come 20 years after the fact and say it's because they said. So that's the engineering part. So when you put the two together, you get the sanitary engineered cell. Now, immediately north of that cell, we had another open space preparing for the future to put yet another sanitary engineered cell. But we have reached a stage now where the technology has advanced, so people are not only talking about sanitary engineered cells, they're talking about waste to energy, waste to diesel, gasification, and all sorts of other things. So those other technologies now come into the mix, but we haven't quite decided yet where we're going.
So, in addition to the cell now, you mentioned that the cell has reached its capacity. Talk to us about the space and how the garbage is stored elsewhere on the landfill.
The area of space that we have at Connery is about 9.6 acres. So we have gone back to using a space that we used to use before we moved to the sanitary engineered cell. But that's not what we want to do, because we had moved on. You could well imagine we had moved on in the trend, so to speak, by having a sanitary engineered cell. Now that has reached capacity, we're going back to the pre-1950s and so on. That's not a place we want to stay. Bear in mind again, when we had the sanitary engineered cell, we were just like anybody in North America, Europe, or what have you. Anywhere in the world we had a sanitary engineered cell, we compared favorably with it. So in the meantime, what we're doing, we're storing it elsewhere on the landfill site so people would have somewhere to put their garbage. While the discussion and dialogue goes on as to where do we move. Do we go to another sanitary engineered landfill cell, which would cost us about $10 million US? Do we go the way to waste to energy. So while that discussion is going, and that's where the baler system and the associated equipment came into being.
Right. So talk to us a bit about the baler system. Now, we understand that it was recently purchased in collaboration with a private partner, but speak specifically about the baler and what it is, what it does.
The baler system is, in truth and in fact, a machine. It has a bin, so to speak. So you bring stuff in from the trucks, you throw them on the ground. You have the associated equipment, grapplers, haulers, loaders, which picks it up, puts it into that bin attached to the machine. It goes through a number of processes. And it compresses it, compacts it, and it wraps it at the same time. So you put garbage in, and at the end of the process, it takes about 2 to 4 minutes, you end up with a bale of garbage, anywhere 600 to 700 kilograms. In fact, we weighed one after we put the machine through a test, and it came out to about 1,730 pounds.
And is it any specific type of garbage that has to go in there, or could it be anything?
We put any garbage in there, but we be very careful. We don't want to damage the system, the baler system, so we take out heavy things like metal. Once you see it, you sort that metal out. And we are looking towards now encouraging people to separate, which we used to do before. If you come into the landfill, we always ask you to separate your waste. So we're going to be impressing more and more that on you. If you could get cardboard by itself, the metal stuff by itself, that would be very helpful. But we do not envisage we have to do a tremendous amount of sorting, but some sorting would be necessary. And we'll be passing on word to the public as exactly what it thinks which work best for us. Because you have to bear in mind, some things are made for Europe. And when they come out here, they gather a life on its own, and we have to learn as we go on. So as we learn the machine and learn what it does well and doesn't do well, and which things which work better with it, we'll be passing on that word to the public and making the necessary changes on the way.
So it takes the garbage, it compacts it, it compresses it, and then it wraps it in plastic.
Wraps it in plastic, comes out at the other end. And what that does, you see, because it gives you balers, it could produce about over 100, 150 bales per hour. So if you keep going on like that, we'll have hundreds of bales in the course of an 8-hour day. So what that does, it gives us breathing space. And what I like to consider one of the major T's in our process going forward, the transition phase. So it allows us, gives us a little more space to pack these things. And it has the advantage of shutting out air. So it's airtight. So if you don't have air, you're unlikely to get fire. So, and then because it is shut up in that plastic, you don't get self-ignited fires as well. Because some of the fires we've been having at the landfill, people have to understand is because it's self-ignited. If you keep throwing all sorts of stuff under the earth, you have fires. And I could come back to that point a little later. So apart from shutting off the oxygen, you could stack it so many feet high in the air, so we save some space and gives us time as we decide what the next step forward. Because it is so completely tied up in this plastic, you don't get the bird picking, so the birds are not there picking stuff out of the garbage as well. And the odor goes and the dust goes. So there are those advantages to having that baler system. But the major advantage for us is that you could take the same stuff 2 years down the road, and if we go the way of the waste to energy project, for example, you could take that and make it the stock feed for the waste to energy project. So that's it. If you go the way of another sanitary engineered landfill, you could take it and throw it in the landfill. So that's basically the major advantage. It's a transition phase, a preparation for what comes next.
So the plastic, it's not degradable, at least not easily degradable?
No, it's a very tough plastic. It's not as tough as the one you put in the sanitary engineered cell, but it could take a beating. It takes the weather, it takes the rain, sun, wind, and even sometimes when it gets stuck in the machine, it could take that kind of stuff. And it goes around several times. So that's why.
We're speaking to the General Manager of the Solid Waste Management Corporation, Mr. Alfonso Bridgewater. Mr. Bridgewater, you mentioned in terms of the bales that are being produced. What are the plans for them? Are they going to be stacked up, as you mentioned? Is there a specific area of the landfill that has been designated where these devices will be stored?
First of all, let me make the point in terms of the baler. When we were procuring the baler up front, the suppliers of the machine did indicate to us that we wouldn't have any work to do because we could take the machine, put it down and start baling right away. But we could actually do that. We have identified a spot and where we could actually do that. But in this day and age, I don't necessarily want my workers to be working under those conditions. So what we do, ever since we've got it now, we have made a decision, no, we're not going to put it down on the ground because it becomes very dusty. So we're going to put it on a concrete pad. Not only would we put it on a concrete pad, but we'll concrete the entire area, which allows the garbage trucks to come in and pour this stuff, deposit this stuff on a concrete space. Beyond that, we want to put a shed over the machine to protect it from the elements as well, and to protect our workers, because if you don't have that shed, When it's too hot, it's tough on them, and if it's rain, they can't work. So those are the type of things we're doing. In addition to that, we don't want to run it off of a generator all the time. So the electricity department and other people are now looking at it to basically say, look, now, this thing needs, I think the people in the electrical field tell me a 3-phase, at minimum 125 kV. So they're doing some work now to see how we'll run the cables to basically get it running off of electricity. In the meantime, what we'll be doing from time to time is using a generator to allow our own local technicians to get accustomed to the machine by working on the weekends, producing 50 to 100 and so on. So in the process of producing some bale, we'll also be learning how the machine works, and the local workmen, employees, will be getting accustomed to the machine itself.
How do these bales, you mentioned that they're quite heavy, how do they get to be transported to where they're going to be stored?
Coming with the baler system, we also ordered about 3 different machines. I call them load-all. And you take off the bucket and put on a different bucket. So if you're baling, in a sense, if you're transporting bale, you have a different something you put on in front. I don't know the exact name they use in the field. There are things which could actually take the stuff off the ground. I call it simply a grappler. You take it up and throw the garbage in it. So we have 3 different machines. They came along. And between the baler and these machines, these multipurpose machines, we budgeted about $1 million US. We have on island already stored in containers the plastic wrap that we may need. We have enough on island for a year's supply, but we have ordered enough to give us 2 years' supply. All the plastic wrap is not here yet. By mid-October, we expect to have all, but we have enough to start the process already.
You mentioned several times waste to energy. Explain to the public, essentially, for those who may not be aware, what is exactly waste to energy?
People mention reusing. If you take a bottle, for example, a juice bottle, you finish with it, you throw it away, somebody takes it, throw it on the landfill. You take the bottle, wash it out possibly, and then you turn around and use a bottle for hot sauce. That's reusing the bottle in a change. But some things you do, if you take that same glass bottle, squash it, and use it, for example, in tarmacs, in preparing for tarmacs on the roads and so on and that type of thing, you may move into recycling. Recycling, the difference between reuse and recycling comes into play when you take a particular product and transform it into something else. Now, resource recovery is basically where we're going when we're talking from waste to energy. Waste, all your garbage is what normally you would throw away, and that was the end of it. You bury it. And now there's a technology on board now which allows you to push the garbage, burn it, all sorts of other things coming and using. You may use water from the sea, desalinate it, you get condensation, turns a turbine and so on, and you end up with electricity. The proposal that the government, Skipper government and Skelec has before them from an interested company by the name of Nanova is that they could take our garbage and produce 7 megawatts of electricity, which would then, with Skipper's approval, goes into the national grid. With Skelec's approval. But Skipper's approval too, because Skipper is the developmental arm, the agency whom they'll have to talk to be able to get that project approved and going forward. And Skelec comes on board in terms of using electricity in the national grid. So that's the proposal. And this firm out of the UK called Nanova has conditional, provisional approval from government to go ahead developing this project. My understanding is that it is $54 million US would cost. The developer, Nanova, indicates to government that they would come in. There would be no cost to government. They would provide all the funding, and it will take them 2 years to put the plan together. Again, 2 years is critical. That's the other reason why we go on the way of the baler. So that's why I keep saying the baler is transitional, because if you have 2 years to build a point, one thing you could do is have them stacked and stored, then you could use it for energy. The other advantage of the waste to energy plant is that even though we have reached capacity with the current sanitary engineered cell, the word is that we could excavate soil going back 5 years and also use that as part of the energy stock, because there have been some dialogue and consideration as to whether or not in St. Kitts we generate enough garbage to keep it going for a long time. Approximately we produce 130 tons of waste daily. We are hearing that it may need 180 tons to run this thing. So if we're stocking things for 2 years in terms of the bale, and we could also go back 5 years to excavate stuff, we'll have quite a long way going. In addition to that, it's safe to assume that garbage generation will increase on average about 10% per year.
As the population grows.
Not only population, so sometimes the population don't grow, but you consume more stuff.
Right. And so talk to us about the company Nanova itself. Of course, it partnered in assisting with the bailer. Tell us about the partnership that exists currently between the government, or should I say SWMC, and also Nanova.
I should make the point. Nanova didn't come in to produce a bailer. Nanova had always, from the very outset, been interested in the waste to energy. Nanova was also trying to develop its particular project with some local partners. The local partners were expected to provide some funding of their own. We are around the table talking about where we're going to go with the project. And then we made the point within Nanova's representative around the table that we have an urgent situation before us. The sanitary engineered cell is currently at capacity point at the time. What could we do? And the idea came up of a bailer. And the Nanova representative was around the table and indicated that he might be in a position to assist us in procuring it. So all Nanova was doing, and the representative on Nanova was doing in this case, was procuring the equipment. The entire $1 million was provided by the Ministry of Finance, Government Ministry of Health. Going forward, what we would be thinking of doing in the negotiation process is said, whatever happens, if Nanova gets the approval to conceive and actually execute this project, the Solid Waste Management Corporation, the government, is in a position to say, well, look, we have $1 million in it as equity already. That's one way you could go.
And just to be clear, there are no strings attached with assistance to procure the machine.
Not as far as I know. In other words, it wasn't a situation where if you provide us with the bail answer and it's automatic. No, that hasn't featured into it. It's two separate things at this particular point. Nanova has an interest in providing waste to energy project. That's it. What they did in terms of procuring the bail and they sort of didn't figure into that. They would do themselves some good. Obviously, if they delivered, as they have done, if they delivered well on this particular side of it, of course, it can't hurt.
And the plan ultimately is for government to ultimately take control. If the decision is made to move towards waste to energy, it will fall into the hands of the government after a period of time.
That's the initial stages. That's one of the things Nanova is talking. I don't want to talk at length at what Nanova is doing because it's still early stages here. They're still proposing. I know at this point, I've heard them speaking about what people in the industry call a boot. You buy, own, operate, and transfer. Nanova is talking about building, owning, operating, and transferring in 25 years. All that will have to come into being after there's discussion with Skelec as to how the electricity produced fits into the national grid, what happens with Skipper in terms of the overall concessions they get for the 54 million things. And so those things are still in the mix. But these are all things which would be considered.
So are there any additional proposals that are currently being considered?
I've heard, but not that Solid Waste Management Corporation knows of. The one substantive proposal I've known of is the waste to energy. I recall another group coming with the same waste to energy. They were thinking in terms of 3 megawatt at the time. So waste to energy is on the board. People have come up from time to time and mentioned the possibilities of waste to diesel. No substantive proposal has been before Solid Waste Management. I don't know if before Skipper or anybody else.
General Manager of the Solid Waste Corporation, Mr. Alfonso Bridgewater, is with us. Mr. Bridgewater, is there anything that you would want the public to know about the landfill? You touched on fires earlier. Is there anything that you care to comment about it?
In terms of fires, I'll mention this. Every landfill on earth generates fire. It's in nature of a landfill because you throw one and everything there. And there are chemicals there. Even bread has a chemical. All right? If you put some bread out in the rain and leave it, you see it turn green because there's flour, there's that type of stuff. But some chemicals are combustible. So if you throw one and everything, all the garbage that you generate ends up this one place. The way how a landfill works, you cover daily. So under there, there's heat normally generated. And then not only that, you have these combustible things. And when the chemical reaction, so you have fire. The one good thing, once you're managing the landfill properly and you're covering daily, you tend to keep it at bay. But there's always fire underneath. We call it subterranean fire. The fact that you don't see it every minute, every hour is simply because we have managed it well up to this point. And to be quite honest, we are averaging about 800 days up to last year, up to 800 days before we see a fire which would be of any nuisance or of any concern to anybody. So that's a pretty good average by any standards internationally. 800 days before you could get a fire of nuisance. a few months gone, 3-4 months, you had a major fire. And that is still being managed because it hasn't completely out yet. So I just want to use this opportunity to say thanks to those people, particularly the community behind the airport. They had been suffering in terms of, particularly in the evening with the smoke and so on. But that has been completely under control up to recently. And only this morning, September the 30th, the very last day in Independent Month, we had a little scare. We went over there and managed that particular fire as well. So we managed it all well. And I think most people, wherever you are in St. Kitts and Nevis, could indicate that you haven't been having in recent weeks any trouble from the fire. We are doing our very best to control it. But that's in nature of fire. Just like how blood runs through our veins, so fire runs through the veins of any landfill. All right? Hopefully with the baler system, that self-ignition would be ruled out, but it won't rule out fire completely. But if you have a fire with the baler system and your stacking thing, it's more likely would be arson rather than self-ignition. So I wanted to say thanks to the people who have been so patient with us as far as it's concerned, and we are doing our very best to make sure you don't have fire of that magnitude.
SWMC Chairman Alfonso Bridgewater. That's our program this week. I'm Jill Cranston.
We're pleased that you joined us for this edition of SKNIS Perspectives. Join us every week at this same time on this radio station.
This program is produced by the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service.